So, do you ever wonder what information you can share about your clients or maybe your employees? And do you wonder who you can share that with? What's ethical, moral, legal? You know what? My guess is you probably actually don't worry about that. The truth is, many of us women are so busy that privacy is the last thing on our mind until there's a privacy breach and all heck breaks loose. And then we're panicking and frantically trying to catch up. My guest today is hoping that we are not going to wait till that point and that we're going to be a little bit more proactive about privacy in our organizations. And so she's going to teach you make sure I get this right, Jean, 10 key steps to prevent your privacy breach. So let me introduce you to Jean for a minute. Jean L. EATON is your your practical privacy coach. Jean, two P's together. Just, we're having one of those days. Okay. She works with the Information Managers Limited, which is her organization. Jean helps clients confidently manage the risks of privacy breach, stay out of jail, this is important, and avoid fines and keep an efficient practice. She teaches practical privacy awareness training and tools that are easy to implement, cost-effective, and meaningful to your day-to-day work. She's the host of the Practical Nuggets podcast, of which I have been on. Thank you very much, Jean. Among other people who have far more practical privacy information to share than I did. Anyhow, she's got 20 years of experience in health information management and healthcare administration. She's been running her own consulting business for over 15 years. She is a certified health information management professional, privacy awareness training facilitator. My son is calling me, decline. And she is a keynote speaker, and she is your virtual privacy officer on demand. Welcome, Jean.
I am thrilled to be here. Thank you.
So for those of you who have been waiting, we're only about, 45 minutes behind with some technical issues. So Jean has graciously given us her time today. So, sorry that we're late. We're still here. But Jean, to get us started, I'm going to pop over and make sure that we are in the Facebook group and tag a couple people to get us going. But tell us why you are so darn passionate about privacy.
Well, privacy is really important to us. We think that our own personal information is really important, and we want to know who has access to it and what are they going to do with it, how can we get it back. And we also know that when we open that privacy gate and we let our personal information out, that you can't get it back. So you need to get it right the first time, and that's not always a hard thing to do. And I'm going to share with you some practical privacy tips that's going to make it easier for you to manage your personal information and, just as importantly, manage the information that your organization is responsible for.
And let me guess, we're not just talking about client information.
No, we've got lots of different information. So I want to ask the people that are joining you in your audience about what types of personal information do you have in your organization.
All right, guys.
So it might be information about your volunteers. So if you have volunteers that provide some type of a service for you, they might be fundraising, they might be providing, face-to-face skills or services, put an A in the box. So you can put an A in the Facebook comments. If you have volunteers as a board of director in your organization, so you've got a list of volunteers and they have access to information about your organization, put in a B. So number C is employees. If you have employees in your organization, put in a C. And if you have any type of client or customer information, you can put in a D. So that might be services that you provide in your organization, or it might be funds that people are providing to you. They're making donations to you. You've got at least 4 different data sets in your organization. So you've got volunteers who work for the organization, you might have employees, and you might have clients or customers or people that are donating information or donating money to you or some other types of services. So there are lots of different data sets that we typically have in an organization that we are responsible for. So if you're collecting personal information, then you're responsible for it. And you might not collect a lot of information. So you might not collect social insurance numbers, for example. But if you've got a name, an email address, maybe a date of birth, though that's identifying information, and you are responsible for it. So there is a lot of information that we personally think is sensitive and important to us. And it might just be our birth date and our weight. You know, what's important to me might not be as important to you, but we each have things that are important to us. And we can't make assumptions about what other people think is important to them. And everybody has a right to privacy. So we need to make sure that we're respecting that right, because if we don't, we have lots of bad things that can happen to us.
Yeah, and I think that's the key point here, is that respect. That what I think is important may not be what you think is important, and vice versa. And that's not for me to decide. It's that we need to respect all of this information. Yeah.
Right. And we want to create that culture of privacy and trust. So maybe your organization doesn't have a lot of personally identifying information, but we want to be able to work with people and show them what is good behavior, so that they can share that in other situations. So if you've got a volunteer organization where you've got people that are in a position of authority, and you've got other people who are not, you want to be able to demonstrate what is good practice about managing your personal information and being trustful and respectful about privacy.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay. So I want to share with you a couple of things, Kathy. There are a lot of statistics about privacy breaches and some of those bad things that can happen about a privacy breach. So one of the
I want the ladies to tune in, because again, I think sometimes we're like, la la la, it won't happen to me, but it could happen to you.
It could, and not only could, it probably will.
Yeah.
So 80% of small to medium businesses will have a significant privacy breach in the next 5 years.
That's huge.
That's huge. That's huge.
And we're not talking a little privacy breach. You're talking about a significant privacy breach.
Significant privacy breach.
Ouch.
So what happens when you have a significant privacy breach? Well, we know that 60% of those organizations that have a significant privacy breach go out of business in 6 months.
Really?
Yeah. Why do they go out of business? Because they're taking so much time and money and resources managing that privacy breach, responding to that privacy breach, doing the investigation, fixing what got broke, telling everybody what you've done. You're so busy managing that privacy breach that you're not doing the business of what you're doing anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
And there might be fines. And there might be law case, and you might have to hire a lawyer and a private investigator, a forensic computer person. All of that takes time and money, for which we don't have a lot of those extra things in a not-for-profit organization.
No, not at all. And I think the other thing that you touched on there, I think, is really important. Not only is it pulling away from your dollars and stuff, you talked about culture, and I think it creates a culture in your organization of distrust. Well, if you know, we're not managing our clients' privacy, or you're not managing the employee privacy, then what else do I not trust you about? And so it makes not a great place, or not a great bed for creating organizational culture.
That's true. And unfortunately, what happens to that business across town also reflects on you. So if there is a church group, a food bank, a scouting club that has a privacy breach, then you start to wonder about everybody else.
Yes.
So we should be wondering, we should be asking good questions, but that loss of reputation is a huge piece.
Huge.
All right? And we need to pay attention to that. So we've got loss of reputation, we've got loss of money, and that might be things that you get a fine for, a penalty, which can be significant. So we're seeing lawsuits now in Canada about privacy breaches, and people getting on the bandwagon to say, you did a bad thing, I want my money out of it.
Yeah.
And that whole process about sanctions. So if you have an employee who has done something maliciously, so if you've got employees or volunteers who have access to information and they use that information improperly, then you may find that you have to have a sanction in place. And it might just be an honest mistake. When you made a mistake, everybody gets to make that mistake once, but perhaps only once. But if it is a bad enough mistake that you have to fire somebody, now you have to fire somebody, and you have to recruit somebody else and retrain. And this is a really big ball that just keeps gathering more and more as it goes down the hill.
Before you keep continuing, I want to tell you guys there is going to be a download that I'm going to pop into the comments that Jean has very graciously given us to give you some more insights into this. So keep listening. Don't worry about it. You'll get more details and information later. But just know that Jean's sharing some wonderful resources with us by the end of this training.
Thank you. Yes. So I've got some 3 tips I'd like to share with you, but do you have any questions first, Kathy?
I don't have any questions popping up at all, and I'm going to hold mine for now.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to share with you 3 tips. And the first one is know your data. So where do you have data in your organization? Okay. Now I'm going to tell you, it can't be just up here. You have to have a list. Where is your data? Put it in writing, because we want you to be able to take a holiday at some point. So if you're not available, someone else needs to know where the data is. So put a list together. What information do you collect? And you can do this as an organization. So be able to get your organization involved in making sure that you've got a good inventory. So tell everybody that, if you're collecting any type of personal information from clients or other stakeholders or volunteers, I want you to send me an email to tell me what information you're collecting and where is it being kept. So you can get to help you organize it.
As simple as, let's say you're doing a Mums and Tots group and it's open in the community and it's like, just sign your name here to say you attended?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Because when you collect personal information, then you are responsible for it. So if you've got a Mums and Tots group and you've got a list of people who are attending, why are you keeping that list?
Right.
Right? So is it just because you want to know numbers? Well, that's great. You had 20 Mums and Tots, but you don't need their names.
Yeah.
If you're collecting their names, you need to have a purpose for doing that. And so you need to be really clear about what that purpose is. So the first thing is know your data. Where are you collecting information? Mm-hmm. So then you can start to track it. And you should be asking, okay, we're collecting names from Mums and Tots. Why? What are we doing?
Yeah, good question.
And, it's the level of anonymity. The least amount of information on a need-to-know basis at the highest level of anonymity.
Right.
So if you only want to know how many people are coming to your Mums and Tots event, then just record the number. You don't need the names.
But if you want to know repeat attendance, you do need the names.
But why do you want to know repeat attendance? What value
good question.
does that?
Yeah, good question. Okay, good.
Okay. So it's not to say that you can't record it, but you need to make sure that you know why you are recording it.
Yes.
Is it okay just to have on a sign-up list? Have you come here before? Yes. Or is this your first visit? Yes.
Yeah.
Highest level of anonymity. What information do you want to collect? Why are you collecting it?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first thing is to know your data. You can't protect something if you don't know what you've got.
Right.
So collect the data first. Then the other thing is have an orientation checklist when you've got new employees, new volunteers coming to your organization. And even on that Mums and Tots sign-up sheet, why are you collecting that information? How can you share that with the Mums and Tots? Yeah. We want to know who's coming so that we can invite you to our AGM at the end of the year.
Right.
Okay. So tell them why you're collecting that information.
Yeah.
Mums and Tots group sounds like a great place to have fun, but we also know that we've got some very vulnerable people involved in that.
Yes.
So you want to make sure that they feel comfortable about sharing their information. And if I decide that I want to go to Mums and Tots group and I want to say that my name is Susie for the purpose of this group, that should be okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So you want to be really clear about why you're collecting that information and then do an orientation. So all of us have volunteers or employees that we're working with. In your orientation sheet, on your onboarding sheet, do you have a spot to say, we have a privacy policy? This is where it is. This is why you have responsibilities about protecting privacy. And, here's our privacy awareness training. Here's our oath of confidentiality. Build it into your process.
Yeah.
The really big piece about this is that we tend to do a pretty good job with our employees. We tend to do a pretty good job with our volunteers, but we do a lousy job with our board directors. Your board directors are volunteers too. How many of your board directors tell you that their contact information is actually their work employer? So they're giving you the employer's email address. So you're sending all of your confidential information to the employer. That's not a good thing because you're disclosing it to their employer. So don't even accept employers' email addresses. Okay?
So let's be clear on that because I want to make sure that people understand that. So if I work for Craft Canada and I sit on the volunteer board of this organization that runs Mums and Tots, and you're emailing Kathy at Craft Canada, that's a breach of confidentiality. If what? If you're sharing any information or only if you're sharing numbers and stats?
I would suggest you shouldn't have that employer's work address at all.
Yeah.
Because it becomes a leaky boat. I'm not going to send you anything except our minutes and our agenda, but in our minutes, we've got confidential information.
Yeah.
Even just having the email list of everybody else that's on your board directors, that shouldn't be shared outside of who you are and your board directors.
Right.
The other thing is it's a sign of respect to those employers. We want our volunteers to be able to give their time and their services freely, and that means that you're not doing it on your employer's work time.
Right.
So it's a sign of respect as well. We want to make sure that people are using the information appropriately, and you have a responsibility when you collect that information to use it appropriately. So if you know that Jean and Kathy are on your board of volunteers, and we've got an agenda next month, then you're going to send it out to our email address. But maybe 3 months from now, we've changed employers. Mm-hmm. And now anything that you're sending to that employer's email address, it's on the employer server. So if they now have a responsibility to respond to an access request. So if they're responding to an access request under legislation and they're typing in Mums and Tots and it now shows up the employee has data on the server, your employer is required to share that information under legislation.
Right.
Okay. So
it does get tricky, doesn't it?
It becomes a really significant slippery slope.
Which is why you need somebody like Jean on your team, because you're not going to know all of this, nor should you know all of this, but you need to know where to get the information to prevent it. And then when there is that possibility that you've had a privacy breach, where to get help when that happens. So Jean's a wonderful resource.
Thank you. So on your orientation checklist about privacy, make sure that you've identified who your privacy officer is in your organization. So you need to have somebody that is responsible for privacy, and you don't have to have all the answers, but you need to be able to listen to the good questions. Right. When people are asking, why do you need this information? That should trigger you to be able to say, we have a good reason why we're collecting that information. These are our reasons. Are you okay with that?
Right.
Before you're collecting that. So having a privacy officer is critical, and it's a requirement of legislation. So in your not-for-profit organization or any business, you need to have a privacy officer. So they might be called a privacy officer, a compliance officer, a FOIP officer. They may be a number of different names, but they all mean essentially the same thing.
But it doesn't have to be like a full-time position. It's just part of somebody's role.
It rarely is a full-time position. I mean, let's be honest. Most people do this at the side of their desk. But you need to have somebody. Yes. So if somebody else has a complaint, and it might be a media request, it might be somebody from the public, you might get a phone call from the commissioner's office because somebody's made a complaint. And the commissioner's office is now going to call your office and ask to speak to the privacy officer. If the person at the front desk doesn't know who that privacy officer is, you're starting off in a really bad place.
Makes sense. Okay. Know who your privacy officer is, ladies. Or make sure your admin knows.
So the third tip is make it easy. Okay, this doesn't have to be hard. Be really clear in plain language about what information you're collecting, why you're collecting it, and then also be prepared for those next questions about how you're going to get that information back. So this is something that we do very poorly in most organizations, and I think volunteer organizations are even worse, is when people leave their volunteer role, what information do you get them to come give us back, right? So you're on Toastmasters.
Yep.
We've got officers and Toastmasters. They have a list of all the members. They bring it to their home office to do their work. And then after a period of time, they're no longer that officer. So how do you get that information back from them?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So you want to have a clean email address so that it can be, deleted or perhaps moved to somewhere else. If you've got officers in your club, you may want to have a club email address that says the chairperson at Toastmasters Club.
Right.
Or the members at Toastmasters Club. And then when that membership director changes, then they get access to the same email account, right? So that you've got all of that history. And then you don't have to worry about getting that email account back.
Right.
You just change who has authorization.
Right.
Now, I have to tell you, I am not the biggest fan of Google Docs and Gmail, but Google Docs does this really well.
Yes.
You can assign different people to have access to those email accounts. Then the email accounts don't change.
Yeah.
And then you give them different access.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So make it easy. It doesn't have. It's not all about technology. So if you've got a club, a mom and tots group, or a Toastmasters group, or a food bank, you should have some type of an orientation packet. Maybe it's in pen and paper that you give to people when they join. That includes the oath of confidentiality. That includes all these tips. This is how you get the privacy officer. And then when they're done, make sure you get that stuff back.
Right. Good.
Okay.
All right. Any questions, guys? If you have them either now or on the replay, pop them in. Jean is in our group, so she'll be watching and monitoring after on the replay. If you guys have any questions, let her know. If you've got any now, pop them in and she'll answer them live. So keep rolling, Jean.
Okay. So I want to share with you a couple of resources that you can use to train yourself and train all the volunteers that you have coming with you. So one of the things that people don't recognize is what is a privacy breach.
Yeah.
So I've got a free 15-minute video that you can access. It's called Can You Spot a Privacy Breach? And it's super simple. Kathy's going to put the link in the notes there for you to grab. And it just talks about what is a privacy breach. And when somebody spots a privacy breach or even a suspicious privacy breach, the first thing that they should be doing is contacting the privacy officer in that organization. Yeah. So again, everybody needs to know who that is. And when we're talking about email addresses, you might want to have an email address for your organization that says privacy at your domain name, so your business email, right? Yep. So then it becomes really simple and easy for everybody to remember.
Yeah.
So spotting a privacy breach is a big thing. Then you need to know how to respond to that. And we can deal with that in a different day. But the first thing is that you need to be able to spot that information, okay?
Before it comes knocking on your door.
That's right. And privacy breaches tend to linger for a very long time. So if you've got a privacy breach in your computer network, for example, the average length of time is like 260 days before somebody notices that you have a privacy breach.
That's crazy.
260 days worth of privacy breaches is a huge thing.
Yeah.
Right? It takes a long time to be able to deal with that. So the shorter time that you can make that is going to benefit you. So that's why it's so important that people understand what a privacy breach is, because the privacy breach that only happens this long is much easier to manage than a privacy breach that's been going on for a lot longer.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay.
Good.
So we've got some additional 10 tips to prevent a privacy breach. So that's a document that you can download to be able to access. And I've also given the members for Kathy's group access to a policy, a privacy policy that's going to get you kickstarted to be able to document this. It's a starting point. It's not as comprehensive as some organizations will need, but it's better than nothing, and it helps you to get you started. So Kathy's got those links for you, and you can use that policy and expand on it in your organization.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Oh my goodness, Jean, so much information. And, practical. I mean, that's what I love about the work that you do is it's just simple little practical things that when you add them all up make an incredible difference. And I think the biggest challenge for most of the women in this group is that we put these kinds of things on the back burner until they blow up in our face. And we have to slow down, and it's actually slowing down to speed up in many ways, because when you slow down, you're going to figure this out, and then later it's not going to be such an issue for you. So the more we can do this ahead of time, the better. And the other thing that I love what you said was, I think there's probably a lot of women watching this going, oh my God, here's another thing to add to my to-do list. That's not necessarily the case. When you talked about having a privacy officer or a FOIP person, this can be delegated. This can be, and not necessarily one person. Maybe there's one person that holds that title, but you can get a little mini, group going in your organization and, spend 3 months, meet 6 times, get this stuff together, then it's done and it's complete. And I know that your podcast, you have a membership site as well that's very reasonably priced. There's lots of resources that Jean has, and I know she's available as a consultant as well. So if you want some ideas on how to do this, and do it in a way that doesn't suck your life away for 3 weeks or something like that, contact Jean, comment below, and she will share some of that. And yes, I will put the links in. This recording is going to stay up in the Confident Women Leaders group for about a week. Then it's going to move into the training library. So for those of you in the training library, you'll have access to this video forever. And so you can come back and replay it and get some of that insights as well. Anything else you want to add, Jean?
It is easy to take some first steps. Start with naming a privacy officer. Make sure everybody knows who that is. Understand what information that you currently have. Understand about doing orientation to make people think about it so that they're privacy aware, and then make it easy. This doesn't have to be hard. You just need to get started.
Yep, absolutely. All right, guys, if you have comments now that you're done watching this, either now while Jean's going to check in on Facebook in a half a second, or later when you're watching the replay, pop them in. Jean is going to answer those. No stupid questions. It's important for you to place some of this as a priority so that, you can sleep at night later down the road, not have this blow up in your face. Thank you so, so much, Jean, for jumping into the group here today, sharing this information, and also being an active part of the group. I don't know if you guys noticed, but Jean's always adding little comments and tidbits into the group. And so I so appreciate her involvement in that. And in my life, Jean and I are friends. We're Toastmasters buddies, as well as we work together to support each other in the work that we do. And so it's great to be able to connect on an ongoing basis and share. And, that's what the Confident Women Leaders community is all about as well, is being supportive of each other, sharing information, growing and developing, because that's how we all do it together. Nobody should be doing this stuff alone, ever. Lean into your friends and your peers and your colleagues, and we'll grow together. So thanks, Jean. Thanks, everybody else. Have an awesome rest of your day.
Thank you.